What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and today I'm going to be ranking and reviewing Electric Light Orchestra's 14 studio albums. Not doing Xanadu, though there is a couple really good songs on there, including Olivia Newton-John's Magic, which I love. But half of that album is Olivia Newton-John, the other half is ELO, so I'm not going to do that. I'm also not going to do the ELO 2, which was like a side project, but I am going to do, not a side project, but like side members, not Jeff Lynne. But I am going to do the ones that are like Jeff Lynne's ELO, just because ELO is kind of Jeff Lynne, right? Right? How do we get here from Frank Zappa? Jeff Lynne was in this group called Travelin' Wilburys. And there was a guy named Tom Petty in there who has a connection to Zappa through 88 Secret Word Usage. A guy named Bob Dylan was in that band, and he has a lot of connections through Zappa, songs, hanging out in Zappa's place in North Hollywood, whole Studio City, whole bunch of things. A guy named George Harrison was there, a whole bunch of George Harrison connections. George Harrison was in another band called the Beatles. So yeah, whole bunch of connections to Jeff Lynne through other people. 2 degrees of separation, right? So anyways, I'm going to do those 14 albums. I'm not a huge ELO fan. I mean, they are a band. There were some great members of their band through most of the 70s. But I'm really only familiar with like Jeff Lynne, Bev, who I think was like a bass player, right, for a while. Not really good with their names. Early in their year, they had some rather famous people in their band. When Jeff was still in The Move. But anyways, just doing ELO. Not a huge fan of ELO, but I do think they made 2 great, near perfect albums. And I do think almost every album has a nugget of pure pop brilliance. Like Jeff Lynne can write songs. His failure for me, as far as like loving him as an artist, is I don't think a lot of his albums are perfect. They're kind of up and down and inconsistent, but I don't know if any of them are really bad. It's weird little thing, but I think he made 2 near perfect albums that are absolutely fantastic. Those are obviously the top 2 on this list. But anyways, I enjoy Jeff Lynne. So I'm going to go through all of them, and that's it. So here we go. On to the first 4. So yeah, I am going to tackle the first 4. These are the 4 albums that came out from 1986 on. There was a big gap in the years when they did come out. So what do we have here? We have Balance of Power came out in 86, and then there was a 15-year gap before Zoom came out in 2001, and then another 14-year gap before Alone in the Universe came out in 2015, then another 4-year gap before From Out of Nowhere came. Of these, I think they're all kind of the same. They're all pretty much Jeff Lynne writing like his brand of like really tight, clever pop rock. But on all of these, I don't think the hooks are as strong. I don't think they're as consistent as albums. There are definite high points. The low points aren't that bad at all, but they're just not that many things that just jump out of me. And I think all 4 albums are pretty much the same. I have Alone in the Universe at 14. I think there's probably the fewest number of like moments that actually like jump out at me. And the opening song, which is like When I Was a Boy, is so Beatle-esque and is so just committing to that Beatle thing from right off the start. I think it would have worked better somewhere else on the album. I think it should have started off with something a little bit different. Love and Rain hints at like a little showdown action. One Step at a Time has some nice guitar, some nice ELO catchiness. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty just average affair. At number 13, I have Zoom. Zoom has a couple more like bright spots on this album that I think jump out at me. A lot more guitar energy on this. It's definitely more of a pop rock album than some of the other stuff. Stranger on a Quiet Street kind of stands out because it is a nice sort of electric piano vibe that works really well. It Really Doesn't Matter has a nice catchy groove. Melting in the Sun has sort of some Tom Petty, Travelin' Wilbury vibes, very much so. Just that sort of mid-tempo, very taut pop rock that Jeff Lynne does. But again, nothing that I think is absolutely fantastic, but nothing's horrible. Balance of Power comes in at number 12 only because I bought that when it came out back in what, 80s, whenever that was, 86? Yeah, I bought that in 86. I think the song Calling America is a good little pop song. And so I did own that. And back then, like, we didn't have the internet. And like, so when you bought an album, like, you made yourself like that album and listen to it until you did, because it would be a long time before you could save another $10, you know, to buy another album. So I listen to this a lot, and I do like a lot of it, but it's got some 80 drums, which are okay, but not horrible. The first two songs are pretty catchy. Without Someone has some good bass energy. I really like Calling America. Probably a worse album than Zoom. Maybe a worse album than whatever I have at number 14, Alone in the Universe. But because I listened to it so much, I have to give it some props. So it's at number 12. And then From Out of Nowhere, I think is by far the strongest of his most recent stuff. I just think it's a lot more catchier. It's a lot more ELO, what we would come to call ELO. It just works for me. Very 70s sounding album. If he had released this album back in like 78, you'd be like, oh, this is a really solid ELO album. All My Love is a really like little sneaky type little vibe about it. Losing You could be straight out of the mid 70s off either like, could be off a New World Record, could be off, what's the one off New World Record? The one whose name I always forget. Face the Music could easily be on one of those two albums. Really good song. One More Time is about as rock and roll as it gets. Sci-Fi Woman is kind of weird. There's some good solid mid-tempo groove in there. And Time Out of Life. What is the name of that song? I typed it wrong in my notes. It's definitely not called that. Time Out of Life, is that what it's called? Time of Our Life is one of those, like, I'm playing in Wembley, there's all these people, I see all these like cell phones out there, there's this really weird line, 60,000 mobile phones were shining in the night, which is a depressing thought. Let's go back to lighters, people. But I think From Out of Nowhere is by far the catchiest and has the most hooks out of these four albums. But yeah, they're all kind of the same. They all kind of do the same thing. They're not breaking any new ground. But yeah, but those are my first four. Kind of weird, right? But they're all kind of the same. Anyways, on to number 10. Number 10 is their debut album, The Electric Light Orchestra. In here, in the States, I think it was called No Answer, right? No Answer. And this is very much opens up with what might be one of their best songs ever, 10538 Overture, which has an awesome combination of the orchestra, some prog rock vibes, a great melody. Did you see? I don't know what the lyrics are or what, but that right away, the very first line that he sings is like a melodic hook. And Jeff Lynne is like, oh, dude, this guy can write some melodies. Really great, kind of ominous, slowly creeping song. Kicks off their career. Fantastic fashion. But then everything else is a little too overindulgent on the orchestra part. Some of it sounds like soundtracks. Some of it sounds like soundtracks of cartoons. Some of it sounds just a little too bombastic. And he hasn't quite found, Lynn has not quite found the way to insert those classical elements, those orchestral elements into pop as effectively as he would a couple albums down the line. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of rough. Roy Wood, who he was with the Move On, who's in this band for this and I think the next album, has a couple songs that I don't think fly too well. Mr. Radio kind of hints towards like a telephone line type thing where we go from like slow to a little more upbeat. Queen of the Hours has some darker energy that I think kind of works. But for the most part, it just, other than that opening song, which I think, again, he's a fan of the Beatles. I think that opening song, 10538 Overture, that could have been on Magical Mystery Tour. Like, that could have fit on that album, and it would have worked perfectly. But other than that, it's just kind of cartoonish, kind of soundtracky. Really, the only song that really, really works for me other than, like, the opening one is Queen of the Hours, which has some dark energy. There's a little, like, lyrical melody that reminds me of, like, the Kinks, like 60s era Kinks. A little bolero energy in some of the rhythm. But for the most part, I think it's more of a trying to force two things together that he hasn't quite, like, don't quite go together yet. And so it's kind of a rough listen. But yeah, that would be my number 10, their debut album, The Electric Light Orchestra, No Answer, as it was released in the States. Number 9 is Discovery. This came out in 1979. This is their 8th studio album. And this album has 10 songs on it, 9 songs on it. Darn, I was hoping it was 10. It's easier to do the math on that. So 9 songs in it. So about 66% of the album is just kind of average, good, par level Electric Light Orchestra material. Yeah, 6 of the songs. 33% of the album, the opening track, Shine a Little Love, the opening track to side B, Last Train to London, and the closer, Don't Bring Me Down, are perfect, are just awesome, awesome, awesome pop songs. That almost make this an essential album if they weren't on greatest hits packages, because they're so fantastic. Like, just like Warpaint, Lynn wanted to call this, or somebody wanted to call this disco very, right? Because leaning into the disco, and leaning into the disco is a good thing. I like disco. Disco is good. Rhythm sections in disco know how to play. And this is full of just a lot of awesome little disco touches that work, especially in Shine a Little Love, Last Train to London, and Don't Bring Me Down. The only problem is everything between those, you know, they're not bad. Maybe a little overindulgent in The Diary of Horace Wimp. They're not bad, but to me, they don't just stand out or they don't grab me. But 3 fantastic songs on this. But that would be my number 9, Disco Very Discovery. Number 8 is their second album, ELO2. And apparently he didn't learn from, I don't know what the critical reaction was to the first one, because he's leaning more into sort of the proggy orchestral elements of the band. And he's doing so in a way that, like, there's 5 songs on this album. 5 songs. And they're all like 7. I think the shortest one is like 7 minutes long. So they're indulgent. They're over the top. Yeah, it's one of those like really hedonistic albums. Opens up with a sort of a proggier number, a little bit darker, called Old England Town. It kind of works, but there's nothing really ultimately catchy that I can like sink my teeth into. The next song, Mama, more of a ballad, more simpler, more straightforward. I think like the opening number on their first album, this is one of those songs that, like, okay, Lynn can write a song, Lynn can write a melody. It just works because it's simple, but it's still using, like, you know, the orchestral elements. It's still very much ELO, but it's not too ambitious. It just kind of, he's using everything perfectly. Really good song. Roll Over Beethoven is just like, it's too obvious. Yeah, duh. Incorporate some Beethoven in there, of course. Chuck Berry's Roll Over Beethoven with some actual Beethoven. Sounds like the closing to a concert, which apparently they would close their concerts with this. They should only close their concert with this. I don't need it on an album. Whatever. I don't know. It works for what it is, but it shouldn't be a thing. And then you have the very proggy All Over the Place, From the Sun to the World, which has some really nice melodic pockets in it. Not all of it works, but a lot of it does. And it's really good. There's some really neat vocal sections, just some really nice little instrumental sections in here that work. And then the closing, Kuyama, which is like an anti-war. A lot of lyrics in this about, I think it's somebody has a girlfriend or a significant other who lost somebody to war, and he's kind of talking to her, but then at the very end, he goes to war and he just gives in and like shoots somebody in the head because he just has no choice but to like be a soldier. It's a very interesting song lyrically, but it's also one of those that's a little more patient, A little more builds, a little slower, slightly proggy. Just a really nice long sort of chill instrumental section in the middle. Really, really good song. So an ambitious album. It doesn't all work, but enough of it works to make it, I think, a pretty good listen. And that would be my number 8, ELO 2. Number 7 is their 10th album, Secret Messages, which came out in 1983. The title refers to the fact that around this time he was starting to get some grief from over-concerned parents who thought the backward masking on Fire on High was encouraging their kids to join a satanic cult. So there's a bunch of secret messages on here. This is just a really good, fun, upbeat ELO album that I don't think gets enough love. Kind of a sleeper, maybe underrated, maybe the sort of sleepwalker. The Kinks version, the Kinks Sleepwalker, I think is one of those albums that sort of gets lost in the shuffle. I think this one gets lost in the shuffle, Secret Messages. It's got a really good, just bunch of just really good upbeat songs. Loser Gone Wild has a really, really weird chorus midsection that just gets all funky and strange. Take Me On and On has some nice Mark Knopfler type guitar, kind of just that tasty guitar intro. Four Little Diamonds, upbeat number, definitely flirts with that Don't Bring Me Down energy. Jeff Lynne knows where his money comes from, who writes his checks. So we got some Don't Bring Me Down energy in here. Stranger reminds me of Split Enz' Message to My Girl, has that kind of nice little ballady vibe to it. Danger Ahead, some really good bass energy. Rock and Roll King is also trying to maybe sound like Hold On Tight to Your Dreams, but is definitely not as good as that. But just a really, really good ELO album, man. No bad songs, all really good songs, kind of fun, kind of upbeat, positive, energy's good. Yeah. Bluebird, there's a song, I think it's dedicated to John Lennon. Lennon had been assassinated a couple years earlier. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really good album. I really enjoy this album. Just kind of a little sleeper. Yeah, that would be my number 7, Secret Messages. Number 6 is their third album, On the Third Day. And this is the one where Jeff Lynne's like, you know what? I can write songs, and I'm going to write 2 of them that pretty much provide the template for everything I'm going to do great for the rest of my career. Showdown, which is only on the US release, and then I guess it was on all other reissues after that. So we're definitely including the release that has Showdown, because that is just one of those absolute perfect. He has figured out how to put the light orchestra in, the rock, it's got energy, it's got groove, everything works together. And then he's also saying, I can still rock out. And he's got the Ma Ma Bell, which is like that rock energy. He's got the pop side with Showdown. He's got the more rocker energy with Ma Ma Bell that he would later, follow up with things like Do Ya. And one of the best things about Ma Ma Bell is it starts off as just like a great rocker without any strings. And then the strings come in either in the second verse or the second chorus. So when they do come in, the effect of them coming in and joining the rest of the song is really, really impactful. So it's just a well-constructed song. But yeah, those 2 songs alone kind of, are the rising tide that lift all boats. But there's a lot of really good stuff on here. Bluebird is Dead is a very Beatles-esque kind of Lennon, sort of solo Lennon type ballad. And there's an interesting little thing, there's 3 songs. Bluebird is Dead segues immediately into Oh No Not Susan, which has this weird all over the map, cool, kind of this weird prog energy, and then this cool kind of groove. And then that goes directly into New World Rising, which is even more indulgently prog. So sort of the segues in the middle of the 3 songs on side A is kind of interesting. Daybreaker opens up side B, and it has some very hocus pocus meets Disneyland Main Street Parade sort of keyboard energy, which is hit or miss, has some good moments. And then Dreaming of 4000, which is after Mama Bell, has some really nice proggy energy, some great riffs, some really good energy, just a really, really nice song. So yeah, just a really, really strong album. Daybreaker and the sort of like keyboard sounds, the dated keyboard sounds is maybe something that holds it down a little bit. But other than that, it's a really solid album. Oh, and it closes out with a version of In the Hall of the Mountain King, which, right? I mean, it shouldn't be happening. It's like one of those rollover Beethoven things. Like, yeah, I'm not a real big fan of like the sort of 70s band doing these sort of classic pieces and rockifying them, but it kind of works. And In the Hall of the Mountain King is kind of a cool song. And so it closes the album and it's not like an opener or like the middle of something. So that works. So I'm gonna give In the Hall of the Mountain King some props. It's a fun version of that. But yeah, pretty solid album and definitely shows a little more of Jeff Lynne's genius side. Their number 3 on the third day, my number 6. Number 5 is Time, their synth pop album. Their 9th release came out in 91. I don't think there's any strings on here, from my understanding. I think it's all just synth pop. A lot of it kind of reminds me of stuff Of Montreal was doing around like Hissing Fauna, Satanic Panic, that kind of Satanic Panic. Is that what it's called? Sunlandic Twins, that era of Montreal. Just really good synth pop. Like if this album had come out around 2009, 2010, when synth pop was making that like huge like comeback, I think this would have been a hit album. In fact, I wonder if a lot of those bands had listened to this album and been inspired by this, because this is a really, really good synth pop album. What is the name of that album that I'm thinking of? Satanic Panic, right? Yeah, Satanic Panic in the Attic. But yeah, it's just got a bunch of really, really good songs. It opens up with a prologue and a Twilight. Twilight's one of those really all over the place, really hectic, frantic, like synth pop songs in which everything about it works. The Way Life's Meant to Be is a really good sort of like bass-driven pop song. One of those slow to like mid-tempo songs. Another Heartbreaks, mostly instrumental, kind of eerie, kind of cool, kind of creepy. A nice da-dun, da-dun bass line. Almost kind of reminds me of the Eagles. Da-dun, da-dun. What is that Eagle song that does that? There's some Eagle song that does that. Da-dun, da-dun. Really nice bass part. Rain is Falling Again. Really nice simple song with some good effective bass. Here Is the News. Just really nice tasty synth pop. And then we have Hold On Tight to Your Dreams, which is another really great pop song that he wrote. Yeah, this is a sleeper too. These last two, Secret Messages, a couple back, this Time, their synth pop album, definite sleepers, definitely need to be appreciated more than they are, but that is my number 5, Time. Number 4 is their 5th, Face the Music. This one opens up with Fire on High, which is, I used to get this and the Hocus Pocus song, that one with the yodels, confused when I was a kid. And then I eventually figured it out and was happier for that. Fire on High used to bother me. It was a little too indulgently proggy. That guitar tone I didn't like, but over the years I've come to absolutely love it. And there's a really cool, like, once that guitar comes in the second time, there's a really nice sort of extended section. The whole thing's instrumental, but an extended section that works really, really well. Kind of a nice ride in that groove. Evil Woman is on here, which is an excellent song. Strange Magic is on here, which is an excellent song. All the songs on this album are really good. There's nothing that's not good, but there are 3 absolute standouts. Night Rider is one of those like quiet to loud type songs. Has a really good melody in it. Poker is a straight up rocker, a little proggy keyboard action thrown in just to make it interesting. Yeah, just a really, really solid, fun album. Down Hometown has sort of an acoustic feel with like sort of a back porch country type vibe. It's kind of weird. There's a random sort of In the Land of Dixie quote thrown in that just kind of confuses me a little bit as to why that's there. Really awesome background singer action in that song. So yeah, some really good stuff on here. Really all over the map. Like indulgent instrumentals, awesome pop songs, awesome little evil woman type rock songs. Yeah, just a really solid listen from start to finish. My number 4, their number 5, Face the Music. Number 3 is their 7th Out of the Blue, a double album. This was the first Yellow album I ever got. My stepdad had this on vinyl, so I had the huge, awesome, like, gatefold thing on it. And it was just absolutely obsessed with just the visuals and the fact that it was a double album. I do think if it was a single album, it may possibly be ranked higher on this list. I think side 1 is near perfect. And I think each of the other sides has 1, maybe 2 perfect songs. But I do think there's some filler. And I do think that over the course of double albums, there's not enough absolute standouts. I think they're all concentrated on side A. Side A is near perfect. Turn to Stone, awesome rocker. It's Over. Sweet Talking Woman, phenomenal. And then the Across the Border, which somehow works, despite the fact that it probably shouldn't. Yeah, just a really, really good song. Got some Mexican type, Tijuana, Mexicali blues type horns in it. The opening on side B, Night in the City, I think is the highlight of side B. It's sort of it's got a pure disco chorus, like we're getting into the disco. There's a lot going on in the song. But I think it works really, really well. It's a really good lead track. But I don't think everything else on that side really stands out too much. There's an instrumental, like the 4th song, that kind of works. Believe Me Now, a short little instrumental. I think the atmospheric of that works. There's another instrumental on the side D that works called The Whale. I think those instrumentals are kind of nice little breaks. Side 3 is a concerto for a rainy day. And the concerto closes with one of their best songs ever, Mr. Blue Sky. Love that song. When my wife and I got married, we made like little CDs for everybody. This is back in 2008 when CDs were still a thing. And so with CDs of songs we liked, it opened up with Mr. Blue Sky. And many of my friends then went down a rabbit hole and discovered Electric Light Orchestra because of that song. That is just an absolutely perfect song. Summer and Lightning is another song on that side that is a really nice kind of funky middle part that's pretty good. Side 4, Sweet as the Night, really nice Beatlesque type opener. The Whale is kind of a nice little kind of proggy little instrumental, slow burning. Birmingham Blues is one of your nice upbeat like little blues songs that has some actual nice little guitar solo in it. But yeah, it's a strong, strong album. However, I think side A is so much stronger than the other 3 sides combined. Night in the City is by far, I think, the best track on side 2. Mr. Blue Sky, by far the best track on side 3, though Standing in the Rain is, though Summer and Lightning is also a pretty good song. Then side 4 is probably the other stronger side consistently. But a really good album. It's just a lot of ELO. It's a little indulgent. Would have been a higher ranked. Yeah, probably would have made 3. Yeah, it is 3 right now, right? We're on number 3. Yeah, probably, no, wouldn't have made 2. It would have still been at 3, probably. Anyways, that's my number 3, Out of the Blue. Number 2 is El Dorado. Friggin' love this album. To me, this is where Lynn figured out how to combine orchestra and rock. And like the whole opening, he's got like the El Dorado Overture, which opens up, and then that kind of just melts down into Can't Get It Out of My Head, which is just such an absolutely perfect little ballad with a weird little proggy middle section that can't get that melody out of my head after I listen to the song. Then we get more like orchestral craziness, and we go into Boy Blue, which is just an awesome rocker. Then we go into Laredo Tornado, which is this weird all over the place kind of funky little proggy number that's just like absolutely perfect. And then that goes into Poor Boy, and Poor Boy is just like this neat little like awesome little rocky number. Like the first side of this album is like darn near perfect. And then the second side is also darn near perfect. Mr. Kingdom has a really nice sort of, opens up with Mr. Kingdom, which has this like Beatlesque Across the Universe type melody that works really, really well. Just really good song. Illusions is like a Chuck Berry-esque rocker. The closing El Dorado, or towards the end, the El Dorado, really, 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 really nice ballad that sort of it's like, think the penultimate track, right? And Can't Get It Out of My Head is the second track. So it kind of balances the album. Like we have that really strong ballad as the second song. We have a really nice strong ballad as the closing song. Then we get El Dorado finale. Illusions in G major is the song that's like the Chuck Berry rocker. But yeah, really good album, really fun album. I think it's a little ambitious. There's a lot of orchestral parts, a lot of good rockers, a lot of good melodies. Yeah, man, I don't understand. I've read some list of other people and they had this way down. I'm like, I don't understand. This thing is hook filled and absolutely perfect. But yeah, that's my number 2, El Dorado. One of the 2 perfect albums I think they made. And the other perfect album is this one. Number 1, A New World Record. Just, I mean, come on, people. The set list alone, the track list, Tightrope. Before we even get like verse chorus, right? By the time we finish the verse chorus, there's like 5 different completely irresistible melodies that Lynn drops. Then we go to Telephone Line. Like I'm sad that people today don't know the heartbreak and agony of this song, because back in the day, if you wanted to call somebody, or you were in a relationship with somebody, or you were dating somebody, you couldn't text them, you couldn't email them, you couldn't DM them, you couldn't IM them, you couldn't any kind of M them. You had to call them. And if they didn't have an answering machine, you just had to wait till they picked up that phone. And man, it was lonely. And this song captures that better than any other song in the history of man. What a great song. Rockaria, this fantastic little upbeat rock 50s type number where he just goes on this lyrical rant at the end, and then right before he reaches the end, he says, "Oh yeah," or he goes, "Oh yeah." He says, "Oh yeah," and it reminds me of, it seems like this song, Rockaria, is the entire basis for the Traveling Wilbury song, End of the Line. No, he says, "All right." And it's all right. And right at the end of Rockaria, when he's done spieling off all these lyrics, he goes, "And it's all right." It seems to me like that's the entire germ for that End of the Line Traveling Wilbury song, is this song, Rockaria. And then you have Mission, a world record. Awesome little ballad. Great lyrics. Awesome little funk, psych, pop groove in the middle that is just oh so irresistible, oh so catchy to close out side A. Perfect. Side B opens up with So Fine, ridiculous. Living Thing, more ridiculous. We get an awesome Above the Clouds, and then we just rock out like crazy with Do You Want My Love? That guitar intro, everything about it, the energy, and then the album closes out and takes us to Shangri-La. Like, what more could you ask for? Like a perfect pop, rock, slightly classical, 70s indulgent album. Just perfection. My number 1, A New World Record. And that's it, people. Those are what they look like in written form right there if you want to see. But yeah, love to know your thoughts on ELO, your favorite albums. You know how all this works. Leave a comment, subscribe, like. And if you don't know ELO, man, go listen to A New World Record. The hooks, the melodies, the things, the earworms that will, like, you'll be digging out of your ears for days, maybe weeks, because they're so catchy. And they're so fine, they are. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, and go listen to music. Go listen to all the music. Thanks, people. Take care. Have a good day.